Hello and welcome to United Church Online. We're so glad that you decided to join us today.
If you are new to United Church, why don't you fill in the Connect card in the description or visit our website for more information.
So let's ready our Bibles, notebooks, and pens as we get ready to receive the word together.
As we kick off this morning, last week we had Vision Sunday and we just unpacked the direction for the year. And so over the next few weeks, we're just going to unpack a few elements. Some are going to be practical, some are going to be just giving like the broader idea. And it's important because as we move towards being deeper followers of Jesus and we lead others to being followers of Jesus, it's good for you and I to kind of understand this ourselves, and so that when we lead others, we know what we're leading them to. You know, following someone is not the easiest thing. I don't know how many of you have ever been in a situation where you have followed someone, like where you've driven behind them, but they drive like there's no one behind them. Have you ever tried to like drive in a convoy and someone's like, yeah, follow me, and then they drive and they forget that you're following them and they're going over yellow lights and like, you know, they're driving at speeds that's not conducive for following, you know, and you're like, did you forget? Like, I'm supposed to be following you, and then they get there, they're like, oh, I lost you. You're like, no, you ran away from me, you know? Or like, have you ever been driving behind someone and you know, okay, I'm following the white car, you know? And then somewhere in traffic, you lose them and you follow a different car. I know, this is South Africa. When you randomly follow someone that you're not supposed to be following and you just pull up in someone's driveway, that's not a good idea, you know? I remember a few years ago, my sister and I were driving to the Northern Cape to visit family, and I said to her, listen, just drive behind me and we'll get there. She was with her family in her car, and I was with my family in my car, and she followed the wrong polo. And eventually she phones me. She's like, hey, why are you stopping? I'm like, I'm not stopping. She's like, why did you just pull over? Where are you? I'm in the driveway. That's not me. Reverse and get away from there. And she ended up following the wrong polo for like a good 15 minutes. And we realized that I was like in Potch and she's like catching up. But I think that idea of following, and when you realize that you thought you were following someone, but you realize you actually weren't. You either lost them along the way or you were following the completely wrong thing. That's the kind of framework I'm going to be using this morning as I speak about the series of following Jesus. When Jesus says, follow me, I think it's so easy for most of us to think that we still are following Jesus, especially if you've been a part of the faith for such a long time. You kind of go about your business, you go through your day, you go through your year, you go through your month, thinking that I'm still following. And eventually when you evaluate where you're at, you realize maybe I haven't been following Jesus himself. Maybe I've been following culture, maybe I've been following someone else, maybe I've been following an idea of what I think Jesus is, but I haven't been following Jesus. And so this is a good framework to work off because we're going to be unpacking the invitation Jesus makes. Remember last week we spoke about embracing the invitation, this invitational life. So we're going to be speaking about the invitation that Jesus gives to follow him, as well as what these implications of the invitation are. We're going to be unpacking it. And can I encourage you, this is going to be a series that might cause some of us to maybe, think of the faith differently. So you might get shaken a bit, but it's good because it's good for you and I to reanalyze, hey, why did I do this in the first place? Why did I follow Jesus? And so we're going to start by unpacking Jesus' invitation to his disciples to follow him. And this is especially important for us because all of us who consider ourselves Christians, Jesus extends the same invitation to us. Follow me, right? Follow me. John chapter 1, verse 35, it says this. The following day, John was again standing with two of his disciples. And as Jesus walked by, John looked at him and declared, look, there is the Lamb of God. And when John's two disciples heard this, they followed Jesus. Imagine your disciples just leave you and follow some other guy. Luckily, John wasn't insecure. He knew who Jesus was. And so Jesus looked around and saw them following. What do you want? He asked them. They replied, Rabbi, which means teacher, where are you staying? Come and see, he said. Quite an interesting thing that they follow Jesus, but he calls them even closer. He says, well, if you want to see where I'm going, why don't you come and see? I think a lot of the Christian faith is Jesus makes that same invitation. Come and see who I really am, what I'm really like. We might have heard about him, but there comes a point where we need to explore him for ourselves, right? He said, come and see, he said. It was about 4 o'clock in the afternoon when they went with him to the place where he was staying, and they remained with him the rest of the day. Andrew, Simon Peter's brother, was one of the men who had heard what John said and followed Jesus. Andrew went to find his brother Simon and told him, "We have found the Messiah," which means Christ. Then Andrew brought Simon to meet Jesus. Looking intently at Simon, Jesus said, "Your name is Simon, son of John, but you will be called Cephas," which means Peter. I personally wish we had the ability to do this today, where we could just change people's names, you know? What's your name? Hendrikus. From today, you will be called Hendrik. You know, it's like, this is too difficult for me, you know? What's your name? Matsidiso. I'm going to call you M. Only Jesus had rights like that, you know? The next day, Jesus decided to go to Galilee, and he found Philip and said, "Come, follow me." Philip was from Bethsaida, Andrew and Peter's hometown. Philip went to look for Nathanael and told him, "We have found the very person Moses and the prophets wrote about. His name is Jesus, the son of Joseph, from Nazareth." "Nazareth!" exclaimed Nathanael. "Can anything good come from Nazareth? Come and see for yourself," Philip said. Listen, that is the biggest insult. Imagine, where you from? Sebokeng. Sebokeng? What good can come from Sebokeng? Let me show you. That story would have gone differently if that were me. Jesus is so gracious. See, this account is absolutely fascinating, and I think sometimes it gets lost in our cultural misunderstanding, because we need to understand that this whole account isn't uncommon. In the first century, in fact, long before Jesus, it wasn't uncommon for rabbis to find disciples of their own. Following a rabbi was quite a big deal, right? Those were the most esteemed people within that culture. So if a rabbi approached you and invited you to follow them, that was a life-changing moment. And it wasn't uncommon for people to desire, right, to follow in those footsteps, because most people only study the first 5 books of the Bible. That was the Torah, and from there it took quite a lot for you to continue, you know. So only if you got it right to a certain point where you invited to study even more, and so eventually it was only like the best of the best that made it towards becoming rabbis. And so when a rabbi called you and said, "Hey, come follow me," that was like, yes, I made it, you know. I'm seen, I'm noticed, there's some sort of accomplishment. And so we need to understand that for them, these were guys who, or obviously they didn't qualify, they didn't make the cut. And here Jesus comes, this rabbi, and he says, "Hey, follow me." So for them, that was a significant moment. Another thing is this: there was a saying in the first century that said, "May you be covered in the dust of your rabbi." Has anyone ever heard that before? May you be covered in the dust of your rabbi, which is a very weird saying today. But here's what it meant. When someone followed a rabbi, what this meant was they would assimilate their lives to the lifestyle of the rabbi. So everything the rabbi did, they would imitate, they would copy, they would walk behind them, they would follow them everywhere the rabbi went, teaching, visiting, in synagogues, whatever. Those people would join that rabbi. In fact, the point was they would walk so close that metaphorically, it's almost as if when the rabbi walks ahead, the dust from the sandals would hit them because they're walking so close. So whatever dust the rabbi left, they would be covered in. And so it was quite a compliment when they said, "May you be covered in the dust of your rabbi." In other words, may everything that is upon your rabbi be upon you. Right? That was quite a beautiful saying, and that was quite a beautiful accomplishment. And so they would understand that when Jesus says, "Follow me," this was the biggest invitation that would change their lives. We obviously look at it from a 21st century point of view. And if some herdsman, fisherman, random guy said to me, "Follow me," we've got questions. Why? Who are you? Where do you come from? Have you got a car? What car is it? Hang on. You know, like it would go slightly differently for us. And so when Jesus phrases that question, "Follow me," in today's context, what he's essentially asking is that you and I make the journey toward becoming like him. That our lifestyles are assimilated to his lifestyle. The way Jesus lives, that's the way we live, right? We are to mimic and model and imitate Jesus. And so when we think of discipleship or being a disciple of Jesus, It's not just someone who goes to church and acknowledges Jesus as Lord. Those are the starting points. But really, the journey of discipleship is the journey of us becoming like the one we are following, right? Our mannerisms, in our speech, in everything we do, to embody the language and the lifestyle of our teacher, Jesus, right? So the invitation to follow Jesus is really this. It's to pattern our lives after Jesus. The same way the first century would do it. Everything the rabbi does, that's who you become. It was a compliment to be known as a mini-me of your rabbi. In fact, if you read, I think it's Acts or it's Acts, where Paul mentions he was taught by the rabbi Galileo. He was a disciple of a different rabbi, quite a prestigious rabbi. It's a name we don't often know, but he was the person that taught Paul, that modeled what it means to be a Jesus follower to Paul. And so for you and I, we are invited into this whole new life to follow Jesus, right? We are invited to living in close proximity with Jesus. I don't know what your perspective of Christianity is, and I know, I grew up in church quite a lot. We spent a lot of time in church, but no one ever helped me understand that all of this is meant to help you become like Jesus, not just attend events. Like, listen, we had events upon events, right? We had Sunday church, 3 services a day. Monday was this night. Tuesday was discipleship night. Wednesday was cell group night. At Thursday, you were just at church because your mother was there. You don't know what night it was, but you were there. Friday was youth night. Saturday was practice for whatever was going on Sunday. It's like, that's what it was, But we never learned that this is actually so that we can begin to follow Jesus. So when Jesus says, follow me, it's more than just walk behind me. It's more than just, hey, kind of just acknowledge me in your life. This is saying, hey, model your life after me. What does that look like practically? It's an invitation to observe how Jesus spoke and to speak the same. How Jesus taught and to apply his teachings. It's to observe, it's an invitation to carefully observe Jesus' responses, right? To moments of frustration or moments of grief. And I mean, it's Jesus. We often are like, does he get frustrated? Listen, read the Gospels carefully. He gets frustrated, especially at religious leaders and his disciples. Like, guys, can't you just get it? Look at how Jesus grieved. Right? The shortest verse in the scripture, Jesus wept. He did grieve. Most of us try and be Superman or Superwoman, and we try and move the grief. Why must I tell them, Joanne? No, man, don't be that person. It's an invitation to carefully watch how Jesus interacted with people. Those on the top of society and those on the lower end of society. Notice how he pulled the lower people up. And notice how he humbled the people at the heights of society. Notice how there was no partiality. Right? It's an invitation to notice the pace at which Jesus managed his life. Notice Jesus' routines. Often when you read, there's these throwaway verses that we often skip. And Jesus retreated into a quiet place. Right? And then there's one verse where it says, and Jesus went to a secluded place to pray as he often did, or as was his custom. Right? He had this rhythm about himself. He had a pace at which he walked and worked. Notice the pace at which he worships, at which he works, and at which he walks. And it's an invitation to notice people's responses to him. Who were the people that got offended at him, and who were the people who were comforted by him? Right? That might tell you something. Notice how Jesus did community. Notice how a lot of what Jesus did centered around people. Right? Some of the most significant things centered around a meal. There was always food. There's a saying that I grew up with, where there's food, there's Jesus. Come on, you have to know this, right? Christians meet to eat. Besides worshiping Jesus, there has to be food. And so patterning your life after Jesus means observing the way he did life, the way he prayed, the way he worked, the way he did relationships, the way he did rest. And then, not just observing it, but applying it to your life. That's normally the part where we fall just short. We observe it, but then we live in the 21st century. There's no way. Jesus, I'm not going to do that. I live in Funnabale Park. I run a business. Do you know how busy my life is? Like, I know you did it, but I can't do that, We normally make excuses. But the point is to assimilate his life into ours. Run at the pace he calls you to. Work the way he calls you to. meet with people the way he calls you to, when we start to adopt this way of life, what we'll realize is that Jesus invites us to a much more sustainable kind of life. An invitation to a different kind of life. When culture lives this way, everybody's rushed, everybody's frantic, everybody's busy, everybody's always moving, nobody knows how to be silent, nobody knows how to be quiet and still. Jesus invites us to a life that is paced differently. And then, once we've applied it, or as we are in the process of applying it, we invite others to this different kind of life as well. As Jesus invited us, we invite others, not to ourselves, but towards following him. But we live in South Africa. Again, it's such a crazy thing to notice how people invite others, not to Jesus, but to themselves or to a church or to a pastor. Right? More people follow pastors than they follow Jesus. Right? We know this. We see this. Right? When something happens to a church or to a pastor, people fall away. No, we should be following Jesus. Right? If anything happens to me, I would love to know that you are still strong in the faith, that you still follow Jesus. Right? Notice how in this account, each of the disciples found Jesus, noticed who he was, and then went to go find someone else. This one went to go find his brother. That one called that one, and that one went to go declare to that one. There's always someone who found someone else. That's what we are called to do, right? Not to find this hope and find life and find this new way and then just keep it to ourselves. But once we live this way, man, what a privilege it is to invite someone and say, let me show you. As they've said, hey, we have found the one that the scriptures have written about. His name is Jesus. Who is he? Come and see for yourself. Which means there might be times when you and I might not have all the explanations. We might not have all the answers to the questions. But you know what? Why don't you come follow him for yourself? I might not be able to do it justice. But let me encourage you, if you do it, you'll find the answers you might be looking for. Or you might realize that you're asking the wrong questions and he answers different questions. However, the same answer they gave is the same answer we can give. Come and see for yourself. Come and see for yourself. And so we're going to get really practical, and I'm going to unpack just one element of this just for today, and then over the next few weeks we'll unpack the rest. The first element to following Jesus is that when we follow him, we need to follow his pace. This, I really believe, is probably one of the most crucial things for us to understand in this season and in this time. Because we live in a culture that's so frantic that people have lost their way in pursuit of whatever culture has set as the norm. And so we run after culture's way or culture's pace, but not the pace that Jesus sets. If we are followers of Jesus, then we run at the pace that Jesus runs, or we walk at the pace that Jesus walks. Notice this, Jesus was never hurried, which is very frustrating. For those of us who like to get things done and we like to keep moving, Jesus is so chilled. Disciples come to him, hey, there's a lady who needs healing. You know, she's sick. Can you heal my daughter? Shut up, I'll be there now. And he just continues. Lazarus is dead. Cool. 3 days later, he rocks up there. Oh yeah, guys, what's going on? Like, right? And his sisters are upset. Like, if you would have only come on time. Relax, I'm here now. You know, like he's just got this ease about him. I wish I could pull that one with my wife. Babe, where were you? Relax, I'm here now. Woo! I'm gonna need marriage counseling after that. Relax, babe. It's all good. Maybe there's a reason why at the end of the section on his Sermon on the Mount, Jesus goes into all these teachings. And one of the most important ones found at the end of Matthew chapter 11, it's so crucial that it's one of the ones that we often overlook because we want to get more, application out of it. But look at how Jesus invites us to follow his way. Matthew 11:28. And Jesus said, "Come to me, all of you who are weary and who carry heavy burdens, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you. Let me teach you, because I am humble and gentle at heart, and you will find rest for your souls." How many of us can confidently say that our souls are at rest? Or is it the opposite? Our souls are perpetually like frantic, on the edge, right? For my yoke is easy to bear, and the burden that I give is light. This is so contrary to the culture space because we have a pace in culture that runs faster than we can handle, right? We've got something called hustle culture, where everybody's always like, hey, get moving. Come on, you need to have something. If you've got a job, you need to have a side hustle. What are you doing with your life, right? We all need to be making extra money, right? So we've got hustle culture, we've got productivity culture, we've got motivational culture, right? Wake up at 4, wake up at 5, wake up at 3. Everybody needs to get their day started, right? Have yourself some liquid eggs, drink it fast, get out, get the sunshine or whatever it is. I'm like, these motivational people drive me insane, right? The slow motion black and white guy doing boxing, you know, and the motivational music in the back. I'm like, just go to bed. It's not bad to be motivated, right? Don't get me wrong, right? The opposite of that is laziness. That's not what the Bible calls us to anyway. But I really believe that the scripture calls us to run at a unique pace. And I'm going to unpack what that looks like for you and I. Let me just read it from a different version in the Message paraphrase. I love how it phrases it. It says, are you tired? Are you worn out or burnt out on religion? Come to me and get away with me and you will recover your life. I'll show you how to take a real rest. Walk with me and work with me. Watch how I do it. Learn the unforced rhythms of grace. I won't lay anything heavy or ill-fitting on you. Keep company with me and you'll learn to live freely and lightly. Doesn't that give us something to aspire to? Listen, for someone like me, very task-driven, I'm very much a get-it-done person. This sounds like torture. But at the same time, for those of us who have experienced the chronic fatigue, chronic anxiety, chronic living on the edge, always hurried, always frantic, this is such a beautiful invitation to do life differently. See, the misconception, whenever people speak about rest in Jesus, the misconception is that Jesus invites them to a life of passivity and inactivity. That couldn't be further from the truth. In fact, I dare you to find someone who made more of an impact than Jesus made in 3 years. I dare you. Find someone who did what Jesus did in the space of time he did it in, right? So Jesus worked, and he worked hard, but he worked at a pace that you and I can learn from, that we can follow, right? And so when he says, follow me, what he's saying is, hey, watch how I do it. Walk with me and work with me. It's not just walking, it's walking and working. So let's not be lazy. Let's not be passive. Let's understand that Jesus invites us to walk and work at the pace that is unique to our season, unique to our pace of life, unique to our relationship with him, unique to our capacity. All of us have our own capacity. We've got our own season, right? And when we find motivation or inspiration from people living in their season or in their capacity, we often feel inadequate, right? Look at what that person did at the age of 30. I'm 29 and I'm not nearly there, right? Look at him at 50. He accomplished A, B, and C. I'm 49 and I'm not keeping up. What happens? We all become insecure. What have I done with my life? I feel like I've done nothing. And we start making quick decisions that lead us down an even worse path. But if we realize that my pathway is unique and Jesus leads me at his pace, then we'll see some of us have a pace that maybe is faster, but we are also called to accomplish more. Others have a pace that is slower. We also are called to accomplish more, but in a unique way. So many of us, we walk and we work, but not at the pace of Jesus. At the pace of culture, at the pace of, whatever the latest trend is or whatever the loudest voice is, and then we run faster and we work harder and we push hard to the point where we do it at the expense of our well-being, at the expense of our soul, and at the expense of our relationship with him. How many of us can genuinely say, part of the reason why we can't spend enough time with God is because we don't have time? Think about it. How many people, hey, how's your time with Jesus going? It's just so busy, man. From the morning till the evening, it's just go, go, go. That shows us that if we can't free up time in our day just to walk with Jesus, maybe something needs to be reconsidered. Yes. Right? Maybe we need to reconsider the pace at which we walk. We run so fast, and it ends up putting strain on some of the most important areas of our lives. Think about it. How many of us have strained marriages simply because we run at a faster pace? And we don't give enough time to honestly and sincerely connect. How many of us don't have time for relationships, right? Friendships, it's like, hey man, what is that? Friends, those are for people who've got nothing to do. Us, we work here. We hustle, we move, right? It's like, no, we need relationships. We need people who fill us up. How many people run at a pace so fast that it sacrifices your relationship with your children, right? In a few years, it's like, what's happening? I've got a strained relationship with my kids. Maybe it's because at the pace I was running at. How many of us have run so fast that it's called us to compromise our values and our moral compass because we've tried to accomplish so much, right? So many things in our lives have dried up. Or maybe, let me phrase it the way Jesus says it, Matthew chapter 16. What do you benefit if you gain the whole world and lose your own soul? Is anything worth more than your soul? A question Jesus poses to us. Listen, we can run at the pace of culture, run at the pace that everybody else sets, but don't be surprised when we lose our souls. And in a few years, find ourselves running back to Jesus like, I don't know what went wrong. Sure. What went wrong is that we chose to run at a pace that He didn't set for us. So when He invites us to follow Him, He invites us to follow His way of life. That means that we build life holistically. We build life that Jesus calls with marriage in mind, with parenting in mind, with work in mind, with emotional health in mind, right? With healthy balances for all of these things. Jesus won't call you to follow Him and then give up everything else. Just like, listen, your wife will understand. Just follow me. She needs to keep up. Whoa. Right? He calls us together. Right? He calls us as a couple. We are a unit now. I'm not running ahead of you. We're running there together. Right? Many people take that verse where Jesus says, if you aren't willing to give up mother, father, brother, sister, they take that out of context and they take that as abandon everything and follow Him. No. He calls us to lead our whole families towards Him with everything in a healthy manner. The last thing I want is to build a great community of faith and say, God, look at what I've done for you, but at the sacrifice where my kids no longer follow Jesus and my wife hates the ministry because she lost her husband to everyone else. That's not success, that's failure, right? And each of us can look at that in our context and say, the last thing I want is to build a business at the expense of my family, right? Or to build a career at the expense of the things that matter to me. Run at the pace that Jesus calls us to run, which means I build all these areas in a healthy way. We need to realize that we aren't machines that are called to run 24/7. Right? And every time you take a break, all you take a break to do is just to oil. Just pour some oil on the gears and we keep moving. We are human beings. There are multiple dimensions to us. Take some time, replenish your emotional health. Take some time, replenish your relationships. Take some time, build your career. Take some time, build your spiritual health. Build everything at the right pace. Run at the pace that He calls us to run. Our pace is often dictated to by our seasons. And we forget this because if you're in your younger years, what happens is you've got capacity to run. Have you ever seen like varsity students? They've got the time for everything, right? And you ask them, how are you doing? Sure, I'm so tired. You're like, tired? You? From what? Campus. It's like, hey man. No, I'm just kidding. We all have capacity, But it's just we've got different seasons. And then suddenly you move into a different season where maybe you're married or you've got kids and you realize, this is a different season. And what happens? Some of us try to run at the same pace that we were when we were 21 or 18 or 19. But you realize, I'm in a different season. My pace needs to look different. I might not run as fast, but my work and my responsibility is greater. Right? And then you get to a different age in your life where you've got more responsibility and your pace begins to change. And then you get to a point where you're an empty nester and your pace can pick up again. And you're thinking, man, thank you, Jesus, my kids are out the house. Watch me have fun now, I can run with my hair loose in the wind, wearing only underwear in my household. Yes! Those little brats are out the house. You yes too loud, Auntie Betty. Have we taken the time to evaluate our seasons and say, God, what does my season look like now? What is the pace I need to be running at now? How can I adjust and make certain changes in my life to still have a healthy relationship with you within this context? See, if we don't do that, we end up running ourselves dry prematurely. Right? So many of the people that sit in psychologist offices or psychiatrist offices, what happened? I ran too hard, too fast, too quick. right? And in our 30s or in our 20s, we're sitting and we're frantic. We're sitting with anxiety, or we're sitting with depression, or we're sitting needing to be medicated. I think there's a different way of life. I'm a victim of this, where I found myself crashing and crashing hard. And I needed to reevaluate. I'm so grateful for the COVID season. I know most of us are like, I'm so grateful for that COVID season. That's the season I learned to just be. Slow down your pace. You can still accomplish much, but work at a different pace. Our pace is also linked to our purpose. What has God called you to do? What has God called me to do? What God has called me to do might require a different pace of me. And what God has called you to do will require a different pace of you. Some of us have capacity. Most of us know the analogy or the parable that Jesus speaks about of the servants with the talents. To some he gives 5, to some he gives 2, and to another he gives 1. You know what that is? That's capacity. Some of us can handle 5. Some of us can only handle 2. Some of us can only handle 1. If the person with 1 looks at the person with 5, someone's going to get jealous. Or someone's going to feel inadequate. Why can't I have 5? Let me run towards 5. What's going to happen? That's not for you. Right? But if you start off with 1, you can work your way towards 5, given you run at the right pace. And so I think it's so important for us to take this time to look at what it means to follow Jesus, to step back and say, okay, God, help me run at the pace that you call me to run. Help me run at a pace that will sustain my family, that will sustain my work, that will sustain my emotional life, my friendships and relationships, and my spiritual life with you. If I can run at a pace that sustains all of these, then I know I'm healthy. But if I run at a pace that sacrifices all of these, I might need to step back and reevaluate. So let me help you. I'm going to give you a tool this morning. I've given it to you before, but I want to give it to you again because I really believe it's that important. It's called a rule of life. And I preached a sermon called Rules to Live By in the beginning of 2022. And this is a framework, right? If you know the concept of rule, a rule is a trellis. It's not like 5 things to obey. A rule is more like a trellis. It's the thing that you put in the ground so things like your tomatoes can grow up. It gives it structure so that something that's normally fluid has a bit of structure. That's what a rule is. You'll see it in grapevines. When people plant grapes, they have this trellis, and then the grapes grow up according to it. What does it do? It gives it structure. So a rule is something that gives our life structure so that we build healthy relationships, we build healthy work rhythms, we build healthy family and a healthy spiritual life all at the same time without having to sacrifice one or the other. So a good rule encompasses these 4 things. Number 1, prayer. We need a structure for prayer. I know many people think, a prayer needs to be a fluid thing. Yes, it can become once you've built the discipline, but if you're new at it, then you might need to build the discipline first. Have a set-aside time, have a set-aside moment, whatever that looks like, if it's 5 minutes after you wake up or before you go to bed or during your lunch break, but have a set-aside time of prayer. And this is what that means. I will live a life of deep-centered prayer as I draw near to God and become more like Jesus. Remember, if the goal is to become like Jesus, then prayer needs to be observed from Jesus. Then we learn to do it like him. How did Jesus pray? Let's look at his prayers throughout Scripture and let's learn to pray the same way. Let's pray deeply. Let's pray honestly and authentically. Don't let the only time you pray be when you say grace, for what we are about to receive. Amen. Have moments where you bare your heart before God like Jesus did in the Garden of Gethsemane, right? Have times where you thank God for the people around you like Jesus did in John chapter 17. Have times where you thank God for who he is like Jesus did when he taught the disciples how to pray, Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be your name, right? All of these are examples that you and I can learn from. And so work that into your schedule and your rhythms. If we are too busy, we might need to ease up on some things in order to make room for that. The second one is this, work. And this is normally the thing that takes the biggest chunk in our lives, isn't it? It's the thing we spend most amount of time on. It's the thing that takes up most of our time, and it even creeps into our family time, our vacation time. One of the most important questions I ask when I meet with couples, whenever we do work with couples, the first thing I ask is, when last did you go on a date? Right? And the answer I always get is like, a date? That's for when you're 15 or 16. We don't date anymore. It's like, no, you still need to be making time for that. Time to connect with one another, right? And normally work steals time from that. And so what we need to realize is that at the right pace, I will put work in its rightful place in my life so that it can become meaningful and purposeful. How many of us can describe our work as meaningful and purposeful? Right? Or is it just something we're enduring for now? I'm just staying there because I'm building up my pension. That's the only thing I'm doing right now. I don't want to be there. I'm done with these people. If I leave now, I forfeit my stock, my pension, my retirement, alles. Right? Maybe there's a way for it to become meaningful and purposeful. Granted, it doesn't take over all of our lives, because then we'll grow to despise it. Right? And so if we can have the balance for that, maybe, I understand, maybe you might be in the position where that's not within your control. I understand. I really believe that if we ask God, He'll give us wisdom as to how to navigate that. Maybe you are subject to a superior figure that maybe, gives you more than you can handle. It might be worth having some tough conversations, or it might be worth asking God for a different season. Whatever that looks like for you, you might need to go on that journey and do it with wisdom and wise counsel. Again, don't be lazy. Don't just be like, I don't want to work hard. I need a job that I can work half day. Millennials, let's stop it. Number 3, Sabbath rest and replenishment. I will honor my Sabbath, choosing to make Jesus the source of my rest. Another question I ask people is, when last did you take a Sabbath? Like, Sabbath is the thing they did in the Old Testament. We don't have time to give up a whole day and do nothing. See, the misconception of the Sabbath is, again, it cultivates laziness. Sabbath doesn't cultivate laziness. Sabbath is a day God has blessed us with in order to rest in Him, to build all these other areas. Right? That's the day where it's committed to doing things that replenish us, that fuel us, that fill us, that nurture our souls and our spiritual life, to spend time, enjoy good food, enjoy good company, spend time with your family, spend time in your garden cultivating soil. Do something that builds you up, because every other area of life you are called to pour out. Think about it. Everywhere else we go to work, you're pouring out. Meetings, you're pouring out. Everywhere we go, I'm pouring out. This is the one time where God pours into me. I'm reading scripture, I'm reading a good book. I'm spending time just being poured into. See, we misunderstand Sabbath, and then we wonder why, at the end of the day, we become so frantic. We become so rushed. We become workaholics, and we're so drained. Why? Because we've neglected a command from God, believe it or not. In the 10 Commandments, don't forget my Sabbath day. Observe the Sabbath. Some of us might need to start here and say, I need to introduce a day where I rest from work and I rest in God. Right? That looks different for all of us. Don't try and copy the way other people do it. Spend time with God and say, this is what my Sabbath looks like. Some of us might need to turn our phones off. On this day, no one's getting a hold of me. Okay? On this day, I'm not responding to anyone. On this day, I am completely isolated. But whatever that looks like, it's a day of replenishment, where God gets to fill me up. And finally, the last one, community and relationships. I will make room for life-giving relationships that foster spiritual growth. I will make room for relationships. Why? Because relationships don't grow by themselves. We need to put effort into it. Right? But what's the average conversation we have in our culture? How have you been? Yo, things have been rough, eh? Yo, we've been so busy. Listen, we need to make a plan to meet up. Yo, listen, eh? Yeah, no, I'll get back to you on that one. Yes, like one of these days we'll make a plan. You know what? Let me get back to you and check. And then they never get back to you and check until you run into them 3 months later. And now that bride we spoke about, sure, you know what? Things have been rough, eh? We don't make room for these things. We need to make room for life-giving relationships. Make room for people who fuel us and fill us. Make room for people who we want to build with, right? And when we make room for them, when we get together, let's focus on cultivating that relationship. These are things that leave us better off than what we realized. Again, let's go back to the example of Jesus. Jesus made room for prayer. Not only did He make room for it, He taught others how to do it. Jesus worked well. Again, the Bible doesn't say so, and I wish it did. I often wonder what kind of carpenter Jesus was when He was a carpenter. But I can guarantee, being God Himself, He had a good work ethic. He knew how to work hard, and He knew how to rest well. Right? Look at His rhythms of work. Look at how, when He was busy with ministry work, He poured Himself into it. He traveled. If you take a map, those maps that are at the back of your scriptures, if you plot the path that Jesus would travel, you'll realize He did quite a lot in the space of time He did it in. Always traveling, always having demands placed on Him, yet knowing where to draw the boundaries. Right? And so He worked well, and He knew he knew how to make it fulfilling and meaningful. And then he knew how to take the Sabbath. And in fact, he says to his people, I am Lord of the Sabbath. Right? He's the one that brings rest into our lives when you need it. And finally, our community and relationships. Jesus knew how to spend time with people. He knew how to love people well. In fact, he was criticized for spending time with people he shouldn't be spending time with. Why are you hanging out with tax collectors and prostitutes? You know? Wouldn't it be great if we got into trouble for hanging out with the wrong people sometimes? Pastor, what are you doing here? Don't worry about me. I'm okay. Jesus knew how to do that well. If you and I follow him, it means that we follow his way. We follow his pace. We follow his way of doing life and work and rest and relationships. And I can guarantee you, when we apply this, when we integrate a rule of life into our lives, I give you at least a year and you'll find that you are healthier. Right? I remember someone taught me this. It was Andy Crouch in his book, The Tech-Wise Family, a very, very good book that helps you integrate this in a practical way. He spoke about cultivating rhythms of rest, and it looks like this. He says if you can do 1 hour a day, 1 day a week, and 1 week a year, if you can work your rest into those categories, try and go an hour a day. And for some of us, that's already like a swear word. You're like, yo, an hour. Just an hour a day. Disconnect. If you're one of those online people, disconnect and have an hour of engagement with your family. 1 hour a day, and then 1 day a week. That's your Sabbath day. Rest, enjoy good food, spend time in the presence of God, and do whatever it is you do. And then 1 week a year, where you just say, I'm going to rest from all work, and I'm going to enjoy life. Some of you are like, I can't afford to do that. You don't understand. Listen, you can't afford not to do it. The cost of not doing it is higher than we realize. I want us to be healthier. I want us to have a holistic, healthy life. Not for us to do so much in one area and everything else fail. I want us to do well in every area of life. From relationships to work, to rest, to community, to spiritual health. All of that is how we follow Jesus. Can we make that a goal this morning? Can we aim to live healthier as we follow Jesus better? Can we do that? Great. This is just the first step. In the next few weeks, we'll unpack more of what following Jesus looks like. Because when we get this right, here's the thing. When we get this right, think of the healthy faith that we invite others to. Think about it. Right? I don't invite others into frantic work. I invite them to a healthy, holistic faith. Amen?
We trust this message was helpful to you.
We'd love for you to stay in touch. So follow us on Instagram at United Church SA or contact us on our WhatsApp number.
Be blessed.